I probably shouldn't talk only about the spiritual side, so I will also talk about other aspects. According to the questionnaire I mentioned in part 1, apart from the stress of relationships, there were quite a few people who felt stressed due to financial and economic troubles. However, the worry of being short of money or suffering from not having enough is not something that started only now. It has been like that for most of human history. In other words, there has never been a period where people were inconvenienced from having excess money. Rather, 99% of human history has been a period where people were grateful if they were simply able to eat. Periods of abundance have really only existed for 1% of the time. Therefore, economic problems are not meteorites that suddenly flew in from space and only hit you. Please think about it this way. To begin with, economic problems are worries unique to humans. As you know from looking at nature, animals cannot make a single yen. Perhaps a raccoon, which according to folklore is said to have special traits that bring good fortune, could turn leaves into 1,000-yen bills. But animals basically are not capable of economic activity. A dog could help with human work and be fed leftovers, but not receive an allowance. The same goes for ravens and dolphins, which are said to be highly intelligent and smart. No company would employ an animal. There are, of course, animals that work and help humans. For example, guard dogs and guide dogs. But even though their owners get money, the animals don't. Thus, animals can neither work in a company nor take part in economic activity. On the other hand, most animals don't suffer from complex illnesses that humans get. People become ill from a lot of stress. Thus, most modern diseases have mental causes. Animals don't have medicine, so they battle illness and injury with the natural healing powers they have. They may perhaps be stressed by the cold, hunger, or the danger of being killed, but unlike humans, they do not become sick from complex stress. For example, things like getting duodenal ulcers from losing a bet, getting gastric ulcers from stock shares turning into pieces of paper, and committing suicide for missing out on a promotion do not exist for animals. Animals are incapable of economic activity, but due to this, they don't create illness, go insane, or commit suicide like humans. After all, these things are often manifestations of events occurring in the world of the mind. Regarding the economic aspect, there are many cases where you're not satisfied. I too suffered from not having money when I was young. My family was not very well off. My father's company went bankrupt when I was born, so we were saddled with debt for over 20 years after that. Thus, life was extremely difficult, and I remember that things were rather tight financially. But I don't think that itself was bad. There are people who say that they are in poverty because their parents did not do well financially. As a proof, other rich kids become rich, with some people becoming prime minister. Certainly, there is the power that comes with money. My parents were not like the mother of a certain Japanese former prime minister who gave her son a 50 million yen allowance every month. Rather, they could only send me a few dozen thousand yen every month, and they would not let me forget about it. However, I don't blame my parents for being poor. I have always believed that becoming financially sound is my own problem and that getting opportunities from my parents was enough. In fact, once you're over 20 years old, you must get by with your own study, effort, and talents. Even though I was poor when I was young, I think that helped me develop a solid self-help spirit on my own. Poverty had become like a driving force for effort. I am really glad that I didn't receive a 50 million yen allowance like a certain former prime minister. If I did, I wouldn't have had the motivation to work. Especially when I was in university, I had a strong desire to work. My father was approaching retirement at the time, but there was no income as my older brother wasn't working. He was enrolled in the philosophy department at Kyoto University and was wandering without a job, pretending to be a philosopher. For that reason, I anticipated that our family would be ruined unless I became financially stable, so I secured a job somewhere with a high salary. I gave up, in a sense, but conversely, it was also a chance for me. I think I turned an adversity into an opportunity. For my part, I intended to gain employment, making the most of myself, but I received much criticism from those around me. Nonetheless, the company I entered taught me management skills and gave me the chance to experience CEO training firsthand, even though it was for a short time. The company didn't think that I would leave, but in fact, learning about being a company president and then branching out on my own was incredibly useful in establishing a religion. When people started with the trading company I worked at, the company usually tried to create specialists by giving them one job, such as specializing in steel business, or developing apartments, or importing oranges from California for about 10 years. So, it would take decades for an ordinary employee to understand the company as a whole. However, because the company intended to train me to become the future executive, I was transferred each year, unlike other employees. Thus, I was able to absorb a range of aspects in a short amount of time. Thanks to my parents being poor, the motivation to work welled up, and I am very grateful that I got such a chance as a result of that. When I was a student, I considered staying at university and maybe becoming a researcher, but since I just couldn't see how I could keep myself fed, I had no choice but to go for something with a good salary. Fortunately, that worked out well, and I am now able to manage a religious organization. Our group is currently developing branches on a global scale, operating with a global vision and expanding work throughout the world is what I was doing originally. We are finally broadening the horizons of our activities like in the world I used to be part of. Money doesn't fall from the sky. As I have said many times over in my books, such as Prosperity Thinking, in this world, if you do a job that others see as useful, you will receive some form of economic reward. It will happen for sure. What's more, is true regardless of the industry. In other words, your income is not decided by yourself, but by those around you or the general public, like the customers. For example, even in difficult economic times, there are companies that prosper and companies that don't. And even within the same company, there are people who get raises and people who don't. It is not the person that decides that. It is the people around them that decide. Therefore, there is absolutely no need to struggle to make money. Always set your aim on a job that helps numerous people. It is important to make every effort to make it your joy to see the smiles and happiness of many people and discover that kind of joy as an extension of your work. It is impossible for you to go without receiving any financial reward when you're helpful to people and appreciated by them. You're free to say that it's very strange for your products and services to be excellent, yet not being able to sell them. However, the eyes of the customers are very critical. Further, you often hear the excuse that someone went bankrupt because of a recession. But even on the same street or in the same area, there are places that go bust and places that don't. And while there are places that lose customers and go out of business, there are others that increase their customers. It's very strange, we must be humble toward this fact. With economic issues, you do not need to think too deeply about specific individual factors. If you set your aim on a job that helps others, then no matter where your place of work, your economic situation will take a turn for the better. If you're not fully utilizing your abilities and talents in the company you're at now, then a new place will certainly open up. That's how the world works. There are people always observing. When you perform jobs that benefit people, someone will come along and extend the most appropriate hands to lead you at the very opportune time to make you take on even greater jobs. I'll say again, there's no need to be too concerned about economic issues, even if it is something temporary. While setting your aim on something that is of benefit to others, entrust the result of that to a greater existence and use the power of prayer. If you do, a path will certainly open up.